Death Holler. The devil's in the details.
Llareyna, how are you doing today?
Up bright and early. And I normally don't get up this early unless I'm hunting down the children. So this is special right now.
I can imagine. Well, have you been actually reading or watching anything horror related in addition to trying to chase those children down and getting your exercise in?
Well, no, I haven't honestly been reading anything other than I have been reading, which I do recommend to everybody, Supernatural, The Rising Sun. It's a 6-bit comic series. Not really, it's something that was written probably close to 8 years ago or so. So it's not anything you can really easily find for some reason, but it's a really good series and definitely has some good spooks in it. So, comic books definitely going to be spookier than the show.
Yeah, well, they can get by with a lot more. I mean, that's kind of something we discussed on Chaos, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, about the fact that the budget, is way more, at least on paper, just because they can do whatever they want and they don't have to worry about, actually filming it or anything like that. So it makes it, you actually get some better stories that way than what they can film on, especially on some of these lower tier networks.
Oh, absolutely. What about yourself? What have you been into?
I've mainly been studying a lot of, or watching a bunch of Stephen King movies, Dead Zone, didn't get to see Cujo, but I watched Dark Half, and of course I read the novel Needful Things to prepare for the discussion that we're going to be having, today.
Yes.
So. But I think with that, since I've already mentioned it, let's just cue the music. Welcome back to Death Holler. I'm your host, the Reverend Dr. Death, and joining me as always is my co-host and proprietor of a cursed toy store, Llareyna. How's that toy store doing for you, Llareyna?
Unfortunately, it's bringing in more adults than it is children, and I do not appreciate it.
Yeah, you're trying to get those souls, but you don't want the adults, right? It's kind of, you're just, they're messing up your plan.
The happier souls feel so much better than the ones that are deprived and need some, love and attention, and I just don't have that kind of energy.
I don't think anybody has that kind of energy. But speaking of which, we returned to our discussion of the devil in this episode after taking a break to have some fun with the comedy movies the last episode. And we're featuring a classic Stephen King story about a store that will sell you anything you desire. And the price? Only what you can afford. And your soul. Mostly your soul. That's right, we're discussing the 1993 film Needful Things. But first up, we have a few newer films we wanted to give our thoughts on. And Llareyna, how about you start us off with our first film, The Forever Purge? What are your thoughts on that one?
This movie related, I related to this movie a lot as a Latina. It's very interesting to see. Now, probably should have discussed this before we hopped on, but are we going to be giving away any spoilers at all? Like the end? I think it's too new.
I think it's too new. Yeah, we can kind of skip spoiling that, I think. Let people enjoy it.
I wanted to say one specific thing about the film that people will notice, and it really doesn't show up till maybe midway through the film when all the chaos is occurring. But there's at one point you see they are trying to escape, and you're wondering how they find people in it. You kind of hear it at the beginning, and then you hear it again in the middle. They say, look for the signs. Now, that might be more of a immigrant type thing, but that is a religious and cultural thing that Hispanic people do put up signs. It's more for not signs of meet me here and blah, 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 or this is how we're going to escape, or this is how we're going to get past the border. Yeah, I'm sure some people might, but it's more for religious terms. So in the movie, when I saw, you see this Hispanic couple that just managed to find each other no matter how much chaos they get through, and they looked for the signs. that is a real thing. So I was like, okay, that's pretty cool to have used that in such, if you think about it, in this chaotic times.
That's good. That's good to know. I mean, I saw that and I'm like, I don't know if this is a real thing, but we'll go with it for the movie's sake.
For the movie's sake, especially. And yes, I don't know how well that would work. You have to be one calm motherfucker and have some faith in the sweet Lord above that those signs are legit. And how do you know who they're from? You know?
Well, I guess if you go by and this is a minor spoiler that I don't think is going to, affect anything for anybody. There is a political bent to the movie, and I just wonder if maybe the political message they were sending is that the gringos didn't care enough about, what was going on, in those murals and everything else that had the signs you were talking about to even give a shit,
I really don't think that. Like, I feel like my husband, who is a gringo, I feel like he would see that and he'd be like, bullshit. Like, he wouldn't think twice about it. So I think it would work if it were to be used like that. The political twist, I'm going to say that in that situation, I think that most Latinos would save their own. And I'm not just saying Latinos. It would be, their family. Race really wouldn't be an issue, but anybody else outside, didn't matter the color of your skin, they'd be like, nope, fuck you. Sorry, I'm out. So the fact that I feel like in the movie, like it was everyone kind of helping everyone that wanted to escape. It worked when I guess there was two people, particularly in the film, the two kind of main characters, if you will, that were helping each other. And that is how it is, because they kind of saw each other's family, and also there was a benefit to them helping each other and working together. So,
okay. Yeah, you're talking about the two male leads, correct?
Yes, the two male leads. So yeah, that worked for the film. I'm going to say it, the kids and I really enjoyed it. Wasn't very scary though, and I don't know if that's what you got from the film.
Oh no, I don't know that I've ever been scared by a Purge film. Anyways, I mainly they mainly to me are, I don't know, this weird. I mean, they kind of play on the slasher, gore thing, the chaos and everything, because that's. I mean, a lot of people can argue what they want to about slasher films, but you're going to watch the teenagers get murdered. I mean, it's bad, but you really are in a lot of cases. Yeah. And the Purge films to me are more about the chaos. I mean, you're going there for the fun of like, let's see how crazy this can get, more than, or at least for me, more than like, any kind of scares, because even starting with the first Purge, I never got, I mean, like even when the concept was brand new, it's just like, okay, I mean, this is kind of like another version of The Strangers, where the people just randomly show up in the house and then they're killing or whatever. I mean, it didn't really. The Purge anarchy kind of amped everything up, and that got it to the level like, okay, now I know what we're going with here. It's just pure chaos. Let's see how crazy this shit can get, type movie. Yeah.
One thing that was funny to me, and I really felt was real to because let's be honest, it was white people and Mexicans, okay? You can't say it any other way. It was white people, Mexicans, that's it. There was one person of color, aka a black person in the film, and he was gone faster than any. It was like, I felt like they just added him just so they could say, well, did you see that one African American feller?
Well, I mean, not to be crude about it, but he was token. I mean, literally in the film.
Was token, but you know what? I feel like he would have been useful in the film. His acting, honestly, in my opinion, he did really well.
He was great for what short amount of time they had, and I kept wondering. I was like, okay, and even my wife turned to me and asked like, what happened with this guy? And I'm like, I don't know, because the last thing we heard was that he was going to go rescue his family, and you never see him again. Now they could they could always spin that off and give him his own movie after the fact, but
yeah, I would probably watch it because I liked him enough as a character, and you know me, that's it. I don't care so much about the color, but I was like, that guy could have been so fucking useful. So you're telling me you got these two main leads. You got the brown and the white, okay? And they're okay going and finding each other's family and helping each other out, but you're not going to go help this guy out. And I'm not turning this into a race war by any means, but he was a good character. Like, I was
Well,
like,
now to give them credit, I mean they did play it well in the movie. The two, at least one of the leads that I can remember, was like trying to get him to. I mean, at least one of the female leads I think in the movie.
yeah, it was
going
the,
this
it was the
route.
Latina.
She was like, we really need to bring them on, and like he was the one that turned them down, and then of course the two male leads are like, okay, if he's got to go do what his thing, we've got to go, like we don't have time. So it made sense within the movie, but at the
That's
same
true.
time, it was kind of like, okay,
It was very
here.
token.
Yeah,
They did not do him justice. Yeah, the whole film though being very brown against white, I thought that was token too.
It was the only thing, and that was part of my criticism of it personally, was that it was tonally, or as far as like its message goes or its political bent, it was kind of all across the board. It was trying to placate everybody, because at first it was like brown versus white, and you're like, oh, and you're kind of sitting there like, oh God, how are they going to go about tackling this issue? And then it kind of switches to class warfare, which to me is more interesting and doesn't get brought up nearly as often.
Yeah, which I thought a lot of that was the purge too.
And it
class.
was, and the Purge at its base is that, although they skewed away from that quite a bit in the first Purge movie, which is my least favorite, because it kind of took the message that they originally started with, which is the rich, kind of have their luxury places that they can hole up in because they can afford to, and everybody else is just left to fend for themselves, while the politicians just sit and watch the country burn, which is not that. It is actually a fairly coherent message that,
Yeah.
But I mean, and then the first Purge kind of skewed away from that, and it's like, okay, it was all a race thing all along, and I'm just like, ugh. So, and this movie tried to play both sides, and I don't feel like it came out as well, or coherently because of it.
Yeah, cinematically, I think they missed the mark. I think they did really well showing how people can work together despite color. That is but it was so small. They focused on that. They were more focused on, okay, here's what I got. Tonally, this is a Latina watching this film. What I should be relating to is the Hispanic people. But what I'm looking at and seeing, I'm like, why are you trying to cause more hate? Because every white person in that film was a crazy heretic that I'm surprised they even called them white people. They might as well have just called them Trump supporters at this point. It really got bad to where it was like every white person was the same no matter what. There was like two good white people in the film. That's it.
They were the leads, basically.
Exactly.
And one of the leads was kind of standoffish in his own way at the beginning, and it kind of he had to be brought to the point of acceptance.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. He was one of those racists. They all should have been wearing red hats. Oh my God. And I was like, the country isn't really like this. I know they're trying to set off an example of this is where we're headed if we don't, come together. I don't know. Cinematically, in terms of how it views people, certain people of certain races, I think it missed the mark. I think it, if anything, like, people are going to watch this and be like, look, that's not how we are.
Well,
same thing with Mexicans. Mexicans going to be like, look, we're nice to our own, but we're not going to be out here helping everybody. Hell no.
Well, and speaking of that, there's two things. Well, first of all, it does that thing that a lot of movies do where, of course, the white people, they're all for themselves. There's no cultural bindings that anybody can bind together at least until the ending, whenever they kind of reveal something else. But throughout the whole movie, it seems like the Mexicans are a monolithic group. It's like, they all care about the same thing. They're all out for each other, and, like they care. Whereas the whites are just like, fuck you. I'm going to throw you to the wolves, and, you do what you're going to do because I'm going to protect me and myself. And,
yeah.
I don't know that's never true. There's no group that's ever a monolith. That's the reason, all these racial stereotypes are so stupid, because there's no one thing that, ever describes one group, that way that any of this stuff does. But then the other side of it, I was going to say, going back to the token thing, I totally forgot the token Native Americans was,
Oh, yes.
was a whole other issue.
That was, which we also have Native American in our bloodlines. And I'm watching this and I'm like, I mean, they do come off that way. Look, the fact remains that there are people as good as the ones in the films and there are people as bad as the ones in the film. The problem is that's from every group in the world. Every different race, every ethnicity. Look, it exists among everyone. So not one side is nicer than the other because they've suffered a certain way. If anything, I feel like people who have suffered have a little bit more hostility, you know, maybe they went through some more things and it's like, well, I suffered. No, you didn't. Your great, 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 great ancestors did. That sucks, but I'm not going to live my whole life feeling like because my great, 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 great grandma and grandpa had harder times that I'm not going to appreciate how much we've grown as a society. If, you know, I don't know. I don't think that anybody should be living their lives like that personally. That's just me.
I agree with you. And I was just thinking now, I mean, the only thing they did to kind of dispel the monolithic thing, and they didn't do it the right way, was they brought up the drug cartels in Mexico. And of course,
I'm glad they did. Because when you think, okay, when this girl is, he's like, how are you handling this gun? She's handling this fucking, I don't even know what type of gun. I know it's not an AR-15. It is way more than that. And he's like, where'd you learn to handle that? And she said she had to defend herself. And it later comes to light that the cartels were an issue in Mexico. Yes. They're like, we thought America was bad. No, this is Mexico. Mexico is that bad in certain areas, especially the nicer areas. And sometimes you are forced to do things that you don't want to do to survive. And I know they're coming to America for allegedly a better life. I don't know. In the movie, it made it seem like you're leaving one place for one thing and coming to another place for the same thing, only with different colored people doing it.
Yeah, well, it's funny because and this is what I was going to bring up, in a world where the purge exists, I don't know that, going from a drug cartel Mexico to the only benefit to coming to a purge America in that sense would be the fact that you only have to worry about that craziness one day a year versus 365. But my point was, on the other side of it, they brought it up, so that was a good point. But why couldn't they have shown some scenes in the movie where maybe the drug cartels kind of tried to cross the border and tried to start taking over parts of, like Texas? Because, I mean, if the forever purge is going on and the country is destabilized, why not? I mean, they have nobody to worry about at that point. The government's fucked over. I mean, there's nobody, that's going to be in their way. They could have easily moved in and started taking, territory. I mean, from amongst a lot of these rednecks that were, fighting the forever purge.
Why was every white person a redneck? Every single white person.
It was Texas. I mean,
that's true. But but they were not Texas, in my opinion. Like,
no,
they weren't Texans.
No, they didn't even. I mean, and the funny thing is, but being Southern, you have an ear for accents, and you hear that, and you're like, they're going for more of like, an Arkansas type accent.
You said it.
Oh
my God, I should have said it first, so people knew I wasn't just agreeing with you. I was thinking this sounds like somebody from Arkansas. Okay, I have to say something. I don't know if we're moving on shortly after this, but do you find it ironic that the wall was the one thing that protected people?
But that goes to the tonal shift of it. It was the one thing that, kept out the main characters at the beginning of the movie, and they were going that route of saying, oh, look how bad it is. These people are just struggling to survive, and they're trying to make a better life for themselves in America because of the drug cartels in Mexico. And then the wall turns around, and it's the one thing saving them for the forever purgers on the other side. So it's like, it's like they didn't really know which way to go with that message.
I was dying. It was funny because my daughter, she's 13 going on 14 here, and she's watching, and she is going through that phase where someone who's mixed race has questions. And on the exterior, she is a white female, okay? But on the interior, she is a Latina. And it's so funny. She's watching this film and she's like, wait, So the wall is a good thing now? And I was like thinking in my head, exactly. Politically, I try not to get into too many conversations with her because I don't want her leaning on any side. She's a little young to be worrying about that right now. But it was just funny, her conversations kind of throughout the film. Yeah, now, was hilarious.
Now, I've got to ask you, we've got, I'm going to have to count them up here in a second. We've got a bunch of Purge movies at this point. If you were going to rank them, where would you rank this one at? And do you have a ranking overall of the movies, like in order of which ones you prefer?
I really don't, because I've only seen the first and I've seen this one. I think I saw, not Election Day. How many are there?
There is the original Purge. Mm-hmm. There is Purge Anarchy. There is Purge Election Year.
Election Year I may have seen.
There is the first Purge. And then now there's the Forever Purge.
Oh, my God. Okay, what is the first Purge? Because you said the original and the first. What the hell?
The first, well, when I say original, it's just called The Purge. And it's the one that's got Ethan Hawke in it. And he's with his rich family, and they're in the house, and the intruders come in. And, it gives you the concept of the Purge. They've got to, bunker down for the night.
Yes.
Purge Anarchy is the one where it actually takes it to the streets. There's a group of people that are caught out in the middle of the Purge. They did not, for whatever reason, get a chance to get locked in. They have no opportunity for whatever reason. They are out on the streets. They are in the thick of things. Purge Election is a situation where a politician is finally targeted for the Purge, and it involves taking one of the members from the Purge Anarchy and using them as like a bodyguard in a way to kind of go in there and, infiltrate and extract this politician or whatever.
2016, how ironic.
Yeah.
And then I see them. Okay, so I've only seen the first and so far the Forever.
Okay.
Not the first, excuse me. I've seen the original and then I've
Purge.
seen the Forever Purge. So I cannot give a ranking, but of the two, the original is going to be number one in my opinion. And this Forever Purge, it wasn't even scary. It was just more political, and if we help each other, we can get through this, which isn't a lie. If we all work together.
It's a good message. It's just it's clouding a lot of BS to get there. So
yeah, exactly. What about yourself?
I've seen all of them. I enjoy all of the Purge movies, except for maybe the first Purge, because I think it gets too political and for the wrong, and it tried to capture some of the BLM movement and
yes, I see the cast right now.
And it tonally, it just doesn't fit with the rest of the Purge. And honestly, the other thing is too, they go way hard in the first Purge to describing the background, which A, is not needed. It sets up how it came about, and B, it's the most ridiculous thing ever, because it targets the biggest boogeyman apparently that there ever was in United States political discourse, and that is libertarians.
Great.
Because
the people in the middle?
Yeah, they were the ones that started the first Purge because they, it was their way of, I don't know, the funny way of getting back, power for the founders and all that stuff, or whatever nonsense they put in the first Purge. But the funny thing is, and not to get political, but just saying, if you look at libertarians, their very first thing is the non-aggression principle. It's like, I won't harm you, you don't harm me, we're cool. And it's like, these the founders, or the new founders, or whatever they call them in the Purge, these libertarians, supposedly their very first thing is let's kill all the poor people off and all the minorities, and then
because that is how a libertarian is.
Their argument in that first Purge movie is that the libertarians only care about money, and that they see the country's like super in debt, and the only way that they can get rid of it is to get rid of the welfare state, and what better way to get rid of welfare state is to have the people on welfare kill each other. And so that's their argument, and that's how they started up the whole thing. So it's my least because of the message and how, just extreme and idiotic it is. And it's confined to like one building, like apartment building in like a port, like a bad section of town or whatever. So it's kind of, it's got the least amount of the craziness that I enjoy from the Purge, outside of the original, which is, next up on the rung of like just the ones that are at the bottom of the list. So the one that I would say is my first favorite is Purge Anarchy, just because it gets you out in the middle of things. Purge Anarchy gets you out on the streets. It gets you you see the full chaos of the Purge. It sells the concept. I would probably follow it up with they're kind of tied between this and Purge Election Night. I think I still prefer Purge Election Night just because it still has more of the chaos, and even though it's got the political bent with as far as like trying to rescue like a politician who's against the purge, it's not as ham-fisted as like the Forever Purge is in its message. And then, of course, I'd put the Forever Purge, the original Purge, and then the first Purge. So the Forever Purge is probably about my middle-of-the-road Purge movie. It's got the anarchy. I mean, it's got the chaos that you need from a Purge movie, but its political message and some of the other stuff it does is just kind of too ham-fisted to be as enjoyable. So
I know we've spent a lot of time on The Purge, and it was well worth it, in my opinion, but can I judge these movies by the covers of their poster covers?
Go right ahead.
Okay, so if I were to judge these movies, if I were to watch them in any particular order based on how scary they look by their posters, number one would be the original Purge. Those masks were scary, and that's all you see is a creepy-ass looking person smiling in one of those weird-ass masks. Number two would be Purge Anarchy. You got a gang of these people in leather hooded jackets almost with their masks. They look creepy. Number three would be the Forever Purge. Did you see the cover? The horse and the...
Yes, that's awesome.
Yes,
yeah,
that was, and I looked for that mask and I couldn't find it.
And it's also, that scene's not in the movie at all. It's kind of...
It's not, which is so disappointing. The kids and I really wanted to get in the spirit. We got our own Purge mask, you know, my little anarchist. We did get cool masks, though. Number four would be Purge Election Year. I mean, It's the Statue of Liberty with a mask and a bunch of people behind her. It's scary looking, but not as scary.
Yeah.
And it's not the Statue of Liberty. It looks like somebody dressed like Lady Liberty herself. And then the last one would be the first Purge. It looks like not Snoke. Why was I going to say Snoke? Is it Snape? Snape. I'm editing this. People are never going to hear about this. They probably will hear about it. Snape. It looks like Snape holding up some kind of torch with a mask on. It's not scary at all. Like, I would honestly and look at it, not even knowing what I know what you said. I'm judging by his cover, and I'm like, that doesn't look scary. That looks stupid.
It's not. I mean, it cuts a lot in that movie to the first founders and them like going on about, you know, like a lot of political stuff, and, you know, in between, like showing the people, you know, trying to survive in the apartment complex. And it's just like, this is not what these movies are about to me. So I think you kind of missed the point.
It happens, unfortunately, a lot. So, all right, are we moving on?
We're moving on. I think the next movie we should discuss is a movie called Werewolves Within.
Ooh, I'm so excited.
This is from IFC Films, if I remember correctly, and it's a little indie film that you actually told me about.
Yes, I did lie. I have been watching scary movies, but this one wasn't as scary as it was good.
Yeah, it's this is a weird one to categorize because it's kind of a mix of like a whodunit with you know, a supernatural werewolf movie with a comedy, and there's some more like genres mixed in on top of that. But I mean, that's generally the
little
gist
bit of romance. It's like a horror rom-com or something like that.
Yeah, it's got that aspect to it too. I forgot about that. I'm not going to spoil that part of it, but yeah, it's got that in the movie. But this one's really interesting. I mean, it's got a pretty diverse, you know, mix of characters in the movie. It's got a political bent itself because it's got the whole like fracking thing that it's talking about.
Oh yeah,
and like the two
I didn't even catch that.
Yeah, it's got like the two sides. There's like a hyper-conservative side that wants the fracking, and they need it for, you know, jobs and other things. And there's the other side that's, you know, worried about towns being destroyed, the ecological impact. And so it's got that in the background, but it really is just like it's more of a dividing line to get the characters separated from each other than it is like an actual focus in the movie. And I don't feel like it was as tonally mishandled as like the Forever Purges, because the characters have their drawn lines, they have the reasons for what they do, and let's face it, when you start watching the movie, you kind of realize all these people are shitty in their own ways. There's no side that's like presented as being like, oh, these are clearly the good guys because they're the ecologist, or these are clearly the good guys because of the capitalist. It's like they're, you know, that's one of the issues they're separated on, but like their the individual lives, they're pretty sordid, messed up. I mean,
Yeah, tonally, I feel like this is more accurate because you got people that will judge somebody for something, but they have their own skeletons in their closet.
oh, a lot of skeletons, yeah. And it's kind of weird. It's got one of the leads in this is the actress who plays in a lot of these. I believe it's Verizon commercials, maybe
AT&T.
AT&T. Okay, yeah, she's you've probably seen her in the commercials, but like it's just really surprising. Like she does a pretty good job in this.
Oh, she does, and very inappropriate, but that girl is stacked. She has got all them curves and no breaks, man. I knew it in the commercials, and I was like, man, but woo, they really go off in this movie with it.
It's funny you say that because I would always see like these pervy comments on the internet about her, like in those commercials, and you know people saying, "Oh yeah, I'd like to get AT&T for that," or whatever, you know, like just these stupid comments.
I would like to subscribe to that.
Yeah, and then like you know she's in this movie and like she actually shows more of herself, and it's like, well, I guess they had a point, you know.
Yeah, see, they weren't lying. Doesn't matter what she is covered in. She was wearing a whole goddamn postal service freaking snowsuit, and I'm like, yep, I can see it.
And let's see, I'm trying to look here at the cast. Her name is Milana Vantrub. And playing opposite to her, I feel like one of the main leads is Sam Richardson. He plays the park ranger that's new to town. He's kind of the fish out of water. And that's another thing it's got. It's almost got a Fargo-esque quality to it because it's like set more northern. Like the characters are all kind of odd and quirky. They got that Coen brothers, like weird aspect to each one of them. They're like these weird quirks of their personality and so it's got that, and he's kind of like this dorky park ranger that in the movie, which he's also in another movie I'm getting ready to discuss here or kind of go over in a second. So it's kind of interesting that he's been in both of these so back to back.
Oh yeah, I see that.
And then another one that I just want to bring up is Harvey Quillen, who happens to be Guillermo on What We Do in the Shadows,
which is coming out soon.
I'm looking forward to that so much.
Yes.
But, I mean, not much more to describe or say about it other than I personally thought it was a great movie. I mean, if I was going to give it a quick rating just based upon what my first watching of it, it was easily a 4, and I could see it moving up to a 4.5 to a 5. I mean, this is, to me, like the werewolf version of Shaun of the Dead. Like, the cast is there, the acting is there, the cinematography was really good, like how they framed everything, and I mean they did their budget well. Like they didn't overshoot what they could do with their budget.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And yes, 4.5 for me easily. I was entertained the whole film. Usually, you start to kind of get an idea who you think, who it might be, who might be the person that is doing all the killing or who's the werewolf. And I honestly didn't know till the good last stretch of it, which was good. Yeah, I don't know, at least start guessing that it could be. I guessed wrong by 1 or 2 people, so I'm not going to lie about that. But they really did a good job of keeping it suspenseful and funny. I don't know how they pulled this off, but I was entertained the whole film.
They got me on the reveal. I mean, I had an inkling of who it ended up being ultimately, but at the same time, it was like when it happened, I'm like, okay, they threw enough red herrings in there that it kind of I started to go that direction, and they pulled me back off and sent me somewhere else. So I'm just like, okay,
yeah. And I love it. I love when that happens.
But really good job all the way around. Highly recommended from the both of us. If you haven't seen it, check it out. I think it's actually now. I wished I had waited to watch it, honestly, because I rented it for like $6 on Amazon or whatever the fee is for that.
Yeah.
And it's available for like $9.99 now to buy and permanently own on Vudu. So.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, here's the thing. This is one of those rare films that I am happy to have given my money to. And $6-7 to me was nothing compared to what it should have been. Now, they did show it in theaters out here for literally 2 days. And I would have paid $10 at the theater to see it.
I would have loved to watch it in the theater, honestly.
Yeah, it was really good. And, this is so wrong of me. This is so judgy of me, but I'm going to be honest. I really hate independent films that really feel super independent, like look horribly independent, almost B film status. Some of them look good because they should look that way, but some of them you can tell it just wasn't done properly. And I have no idea what they did right with this film, but it was everything, actually. I should rephrase that. They did everything right. It looked good. The sound was good. The staging was good. The actors were amazing. The direction of the film, I just pretty much loved everything about it.
And the other thing is they knew how to, I mean, going back to the budget, they knew how to work that budget. Whenever they showed the things that would, require more, prosthetics, more makeup work, they were quicker. They gave you just enough, for filling it for the, your brain to fill in the, information without, focusing on it too long. And the location they chose, having everybody, and they give a great reason in the movie for why this happens, when they have everybody pushed into one house or structure. It really allowed them to, expand their budget in other directions because they didn't have to focus on, filming in all these different areas. So
absolutely,
great job.
Kind of like Ghost from Game of Thrones. All right,
man.
Moving forward.
Just a quick thing I wanted to bring up: the Tomorrow War, with that's just recently popped up on Amazon Prime for anybody that has that. A neat little movie that's got Chris Pratt in it. It's interesting to see him, kind of post. Well, not really post. He's kind of in the middle still of playing Star-Lord, but I mean, there's been enough of a break that I kind of feel like it's post Star-Lord. But
Dad bod Star-Lord.
He really does a good job in this film. To me, he cements like that he's on the track to be the next action hero, going along with his now father-in-law Arnold Schwarzenegger, that kind of route. He in this movie, basically the concept of it is, without spoiling a whole lot because it's kind of in the beginning of the movie, Chris Pratt's with his wife and his and daughter, and his daughter's like really young. And they're enjoying I think it's around Christmas or some kind of holiday. They've got a bunch of family over. Kind of reveals that he's estranged from his own father, who ends up being, and I never can remember this actor's name. The character or the actor who plays in the old old Super Spider-Man movies as J. Jonah Jameson, that's in all those We Are Farmers commercials.
Oh my God!
Let me see if I can look this up real quick. He is. That would be J.K. Simmons that I'm thinking of. And he plays the father of Chris Pratt, and it kind of revealed later that he's more of like this conspiracy nut. And
God.
But it actually ends up being a good thing, because while they're, enjoying their little get-together at the holiday or whatever it is, it's they're watching like a soccer game, I believe it is, some kind of sports game.
The World Cup.
Yeah, and that might be why they're gathered together, just for the World Cup. Whatever it is they're watching this, and all of a sudden there's this like burst of like energy or whatever that starts happening all over the field. Everybody rushes off the field, and all of a sudden these people come out of the burst of energy, and they reveal to everybody that they're from the future, about 30 years in. And they're coming back to draft people to come help them fight a war that they have basically already lost against an alien species, and that if they don't come help them, everybody will be dead in 30 years' time. And that's kind of the start of the movie from there.
How do you even begin to process that if that really happens? What would you do?
I mean, I don't know. It's like, I mean, the movie does a good job of that. It basically, like, when people realize that they've only got 30 years until the world's basically over with, like, everything starts falling into decay, because, I mean, why would you go to your 9-to-5 piece of shit job if there's no future for anybody?
Oh, yeah. I'm like, let's run through these precious resources and party.
Yeah, and that's basically what it is. It's like everything's falling apart, like nobody, and it's almost like I don't know, one of those vicious cycles or whatever. It's like, they come back, they announce this, and then the world kind of starts going to shit anyways, because everybody's like, well, we don't have a future. Who gives a shit,
Great. Way to go, assholes.
But of course, since Chris Pratt is the lead, he gets drafted in this future war, and it kind of goes on from there. And it reveals that...
Did he go talk to his dad, who is a planet, and maybe negotiate some terms?
No,
Just
he does.
wondering.
He does go to his conspiracy dad and gets help from him to do some things. So it kind of follows that path.
Oh, nice.
But it's got a neat twist in that whenever he gets to the future and the aliens are very well done. They did a good job with CGI or whatever they did to, kind of, create the creatures. I don't know if they actually did any, makeup effects. But they're sufficiently dangerous and there's enough tension there that it kind of sells it. The best part about the movie is it's got like a family connection because he's all the time telling his daughter before he's drafted to go to the future that, he wants her to, he's trying to help her out with her studies. He wants her to be, whatever she can be, and kind of, building her up. And it turns out that his daughter is kind of the leader of the resistance. And so he gets to meet his daughter 30 years on.
Oh, nice.
And she and the two of them get to work together. And it's got a lot of, that kind of family, stuff going on. And I'm not going to reveal anything else, but I mean, there is some, things that happen there and drama that happens between them in good and bad ways. And that whenever he gets the chance to be sent back, he has a chance to fix some things that he messed up in the original timeline whenever he didn't go to the future. It's kind of weird.
I thought you weren't supposed to do that. You ruined the timeline.
Well, I mean, I feel like they would have ruined the timeline anyway. So
where are the timekeepers, Loki? No, I was kidding.
Let's not get started on that. But it's a good film. It does have the actor that I mentioned from the Werewolves Within. He's one of the actual three leads in the movie. They kind of drop him about like through the midsection of the movie whenever it's focusing more on Chris Pratt and his daughter. But it does come back, at the end and bring him back in and
okay,
so,
good.
I mean, and so
he wasn't token, is what you're saying.
No, he wasn't. But it's got a fair amount of big name actors. Like his daughter in the future is played by Yvonne Stravosky, and she's the one that played the female lead on Chuck. If you ever watched that show, she was like Chuck's girlfriend. Good show. You need to watch it. And then Betty Gilpin plays his wife in the past, and she was in a movie.
You mean in the present?
Well, I guess in the present, depending upon which part of the timeline you're in.
That's true. Okay.
But she plays his wife, and it's funny because we had just literally got through watching The Hunt right before we watched this, which is another kind of pseudo horror movie, and she's the lead in that movie. So it's kind of funny.
Oh my God! You're just seeing all. You're like, hey, I know you.
It's like I saw you, and I saw you, and it's like they're just all in the same movies.
Oh my God.
It's a good movie. It's a good action romp. There's some tension there. There's some horror elements whenever the aliens are first kind of introduced, but I don't know. They kind of lose their importance. It's more like the difference. Like if you go the Aliens films, like Alien was like this kind of like haunted house on a spaceship type movie, whereas Aliens is just like a big action romp, like game over, man, game over. This is more like Aliens versus Alien. It's got some of the the creatures there and that sort of thing, but it's more like action packed.
Yeah.
But moving on from that, just cover the Fear Street movies. Now,
God,
these were recently released on Netflix, and there's 3 of them. They're set in 3 different time periods. I don't remember exactly what they are. I think it's 1994 is the first one. The second one is 1978, 1976. It's in the 70s. And then the last one is 1666. Of course, yeah.
So they go backwards.
They do go backwards, and then they come full circle because it bookends coming back to 1994. So it kind of loops back around. My biggest problem with these movies is how uneven they are. I mean, I don't know if they filmed these things back to back, but my biggest issue is that the first one, if I hadn't stuck with it, I would have completely hated this series because the first movie, it starts out with like a Scream ripoff. I mean, literally, it's like some guy, like this girl's in a mall and she's starting to get phone calls from somebody who's threatening to kill her, and she tries to lock herself in, the gate and everything in the mall, and she ends up getting stabbed to death anyways, like at a certain point. And, it's a masked killer, and it's like, okay, this is Scream. And then it kind of brings in some other elements, like there's a witch and there's some of these haunted, these people are supposed to be possessed by the spirit of the witch. The biggest issue that I have with the first one is that the leads are very unlikable. And I don't mean it because of anything like, politically or anything like that. I mean, they tried to focus, paint this movie as like one of the first like lesbian-led horror movies, which is fine.
Yeah.
But
was it in your face though? Was it very...
They went out of their way to say how they couldn't, they had to be in the closet. They couldn't, come. I mean, it was 1994, but at the same time, it also, like, I don't know, like, it felt like, I mean, the amount of, like, other, like, just, like, regular character, I mean, like white, straight characters were, like, very limited in the film, and I don't know why that was, because I felt like that you could have still had the lesbian leads and then still had, that in the movie, but they tried to go the route of, if they had a white, straight lead, they either killed them or they were bad people. And I was just like, okay, that's fine if that's how you want to play it. But that wasn't really my biggest issue, just the fact that the leads were just awful people. Like, you didn't care about them because they literally sacrificed everybody around them just for themselves.
Yes,
and
I do remember catching that. I was sleeping while this was playing, by the way.
Probably the best way
I
to
wasn't
watch
watching it. The husband was. It was one of those, again, this is on, this is what's happening.
And that was my biggest issue with it, is just like, you're watching these leads and it's like, okay, give me a reason to root for these people. And there's no reason. Like the sister, there's the dorky little kid brother, and he's the one that's kind of researched all of this, and his sister's just horrible to him. She's just, he's just kind of a drag on her. Like, she's obsessed with her ex, which, she says Sam, and there's like, okay, and then you find out the reveal, ooh, it's a girl, like, big reveal that nowadays that's not a big reveal, who cares? And it turns out that Sam tried to go the other way and, like, go straight for a while, and she's dating this guy. So now the main, or the sister, the lead, she's still obsessed with her ex. She hates the guy that she's dating now, and, like, it's all this drama. And then whenever they do get back together, it's not like, I mean, they've got like so many issues with each other that it's like, why are you two? I mean, it's almost like a toxic relationship, and there's nothing at all that to really root for between those two. And through the whole movie, if somebody else can be sacrificed so that one of the two of them can be saved, they'll get sacrificed. And that's like, you don't make a hero that way at all. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. My other big issue is that it's tonally very weird, because the kills are really graphic, and some of them are really good. There's a bread slicer kill that's amazing that I've never seen in a film before.
You did mention that.
Literally somebody's face gets run through a bread slicer, and it gets cut up in all the various pieces of bread, or whatever, like in slices that way. And that's really cool. I've never seen that. But the movie plays like Goosebumps as far as like how the characters act. And I'm just like, you don't get characters acting like Goosebumps. And I'm talking about the movie, of course, Jack Black and that sort of thing. How kiddie that is. You don't get to act that way and then have this graphic, like, death scenes on the other side of it. What are you trying to accomplish with this? I mean, I felt like
what is to gain?
I felt like I was watching a movie that was steered toward kids, which it was. It's toward teenagers, and then they threw all these like graphic death scenes, and I'm like, these don't sync up. Like, there's nothing like, and it's not even just how they were acting. It's just like how the movie was shot and everything. It was more of like a goofy kids movie at times. And
was there any sexual content in it?
I don't really remember there being, other than the characters kind of making out,
Oh, okay.
That I don't remember anything graphic that way. It was mostly just, how they were killing them, all the characters in the movie. But I'm just like, none of it fit tonally. It was like, I mean, they acted like they were going for like this real, I mean, it was oriented toward kids, and then they would like, and the other stuff was like oriented toward like these like older, like, gore hounds, like the people who grew up on like slasher films. I'm like, okay. And so I didn't care for the first one. I stuck with the second one mainly because I found out that booking in the second movie was an actress, Gillian Jacobs, and she played Britta on Community, and I love that TV show.
Yeah.
and I wanted to see her in the movie, and she was good, and she played like the only survivor of like the of this witch's attacks or whatever, and so the main characters from the first one go to her, and she recounts her story, and it happens in like the 70s in like a camp, and so it's got the second movie has like the Jason type, thing, or, The Burning, or any of those movies that were set in like camps back in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. And tonally it works because it's right there where it needs to be at. Like the kills, whenever they happen, the tone of the characters in the movie, they're all aligned. It's more toward like, I'd say late teens, that sort of thing. And it's a better put together movie. It's not as interesting, in certain ways, and none of the kills are that inventive, because literally there was a guy walking around with like a bag over his head killing people with an axe, and he just chops their head usually, and that's how he kills them. I mean, there's nothing inventive with the kills, but it was a better movie. The actress, I think, that played the young version of Gillian's character, she was in Stranger Things. She's the little the redhead girl who plays like the love interest to one of the characters in that. And so she was really good in it, and the dynamic in that one was more like two sisters trying to take care of each other throughout the film, and it worked better because you actually did root for the characters. The Gillian Jacobs, like younger version, starts out being kind of like a shit, like she's kind of rude to everybody, but then like throughout the movie she kind of eases up, and then of course her older sister kind of helps with that, so there's a reason to root for them. So I'm like, okay, this has better final girl type things that goes on with slashers. And then it turns around from that, and it goes back in the last movie. It's revealed that whenever you find the body parts or whatever and you combine them together of the witch, then like whoever does that, she basically reveals to him like what happened to her, like the witch herself. It's not actually her that's doing the curses, spoiler alert. I mean, I'm just saying that just because it's not worth, it's not really worth caring about in my opinion, but I'm not going to say who's doing it, but it's not her. So anyways, it goes back to 1666, kind of like a pilgrim town. And
oh, shocker.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
wait, what is that? What why am I not, is it pagan? No, not pagan. What was the religion?
Puritan.
There we go. Because I was thinking the Puritanic Panic.
Yeah, and it's a Puritan, little village. It's in
the 1600s. No.
Yeah. I don't. They just chose 1666 because of the
666.
Yeah, and anyways, so they reuse characters from all the first two movies, which is kind of weird because you're supposed to be in a Puritan village, which you'd think would be extremely white, and you got these characters of color in the movie, and it's just and it's just really weird that they went that route. But it's kind of just hinting that, I guess, that the main character, the sister, she's the one that travels back as she's seeing this. I guess she just sees like echoes of people that she grew up with and that sort of thing, and it's okay for what it is. It's only like it's only partly set in that time period, because it does, like, the last third of the movie cycles back to 1994 and finishes out the series. So it's only like, it's not all the way there. And it kind of tries to play off like The Witch and some other movies that we've already discussed in that way. There's a lot of that, but it's not bad. It's just, it's okay. It's your typical, like, witchcraft, devil, thing, Puritan times type movie. Not bad, not terrible, not great, just somewhere in the middle. So you've got the first section of the movie that's like like the new age slasher, which is awful. You got the middle section of the movies that's old school slasher, which is pretty decent, and then you got the last one, which was just okay. So overall, like, the series ends up being just like a middling, like, if I was going to give it a rating, like 2.5 at best.
Ugh.
And that's a lot of time to devote to a series of movies when it ends up just being middling, all the way around.
Yeah, and your vote doesn't count because it wasn't aimed towards your, genre of people in general. Older male, older male. Got to make it sound like you're ancient. A couple 100 years old. You're still, you're still bright and kicking.
I was trying to put myself in the mindset of like a teenager, and I still feel like, but I'm I don't know, I'm biased because I grew up with the original slasher movies and I've seen better. So that's part of it. I guess if I was a teenager now, I would probably rate it higher. And I have seen teenagers rated high, and that's fine. If that's their stepping stone to get in the genre, great.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Did you read the Fear Street books growing up?
I did not read Fear Street.
I did, and they were great.
For anybody out there that doesn't know, it's a series of R.L. Stine books. He made those like oriented toward teenagers, whereas Goosebumps was oriented toward kids. I did read Goosebumps. I read a lot of those, but I did not read Fear Street.
I loved Goosebumps, and then I did move into Fear Street. They had some trilogies in Fear Street. I had almost every single book. They were really good, especially they were pretty appropriate for, I would think I was reading them as early as 12, which I had no business. I should have been like maybe 14 or up reading these Fear Street books, but they were so good. I did not watch the Fear Street movies because I probably, and I should know better. I mean, I'm on a podcast reviewing movies and shows related to horror. I couldn't do it. I did in my dream watch it because I do dream about what I'm hearing when it's on. So I can actually see it in my head, believe it or not, especially if I get like a first glimpse of the characters. It'll literally play in my head while I'm sleeping. It's weird. It's cool, but it's like, that's probably not how it really was, you know? I'm obviously making things up in my head. And didn't sound like the hubby liked it very much. I did not know that my daughter, who is a teenager, watched it. She hated it. Absolutely hated it.
And that's the main thing. Her opinion makes has way more worth than any of ours because she is the target audience for this.
She is the target audience. She said specifically, now she doesn't go into detail. Her answers are yes, no, she's a teenager, okay? But she did say this about the film. I said, what did you not like about it? Can you give me anything? She said they did not focus on the horror as much as they should have. She said she really thought it could have been scarier. She said the original Goosebumps series, not just the books, the TV show was actually scarier than this. She said there was more suspense. And granted, I mean, the horror elements, you weren't going to get that out of Goosebumps. But she said at least you felt more fear. She goes, I didn't feel any fear in this. She goes, it was kind of cheesy. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize it. And for her to see that, now I know you have to really put out a scary movie. I mean, I asked her, give me an example of a scary movie, something that you watch and you actually, because she does not give off she doesn't give off that she feels fear very often. And she said The Nun. So that was an example of a movie that would scare her. But she said even then, she's like, I can still enjoy a scary movie just because I'm not being scared. She goes, and this I did not enjoy.
Well, she has a very valid point. Like most of this is like relationship drama. I mean, there's a lot of that, and that's the reason that, especially the first one doesn't work, is because you don't care about the characters. At least I didn't, and there was nothing that they did that made me care about them. And watching them basically fight each other over the fact that they broke up and everything for most of the film, while a bunch of people are getting killed and kind of on the edges of the screen, not interesting. Just not at all. And I think that's the reason the second and third one did better for me, because caring about the characters a little bit more whenever it focused on the relationships, which it still did, they were a little bit more, or a little bit easier to relate to. When it cycles to the one in 1666, it also goes over the lesbian relationship in that time period, but it's more interesting because the character that the lead from the very first movie, she's reused in this one. When that actress is in this one, she plays a likable character. You understand her struggle, where she's coming from, why she's the way she is, and she's not got just the baggage of just being like this horrible obsessive person. So I mean They did a better job with it later on, so it doesn't excuse how they are in the 1994 version. But I agree, circling back to what you said, the horror is tangential in a lot of this. It's like jump scares, and even then they're telegraphed so far in advance that there's nothing really to even say in that sense.
Yeah, Little Lucifina, I don't know what your official score, but an official score from Little Lucifina, she said she gives the series a 1.
Like I said,
Did not like it. I think she mentally checked out after the first episode.
Well, I would have, but I gave it a chance just because of Gillian Jacobs, like I said, purely upon her, and then like
Britta.
Yeah, Britta, and she does a great job. I mean, for what they give her, she sells like this person who's damaged, which sadly, Gillian Jacobs, that's what she has been pigeonholed into throughout her career. She plays damaged characters. Even as Britta, it didn't start out that way,
yeah.
but it reveals more of herself. She is damaged, and you go back through Gillian Jacobs, like, filmography, and like she plays like these young prostitutes who's dealt with like, sexual abuse, like she down the line. So whenever they got her to play this character who was the traumatic survivor of like, basically a serial killer, she does it well because that's what she's used to playing. I mean, in a roundabout way. But rest of them, I mean, like I said, I would give it a 2.5 for the series. Honestly, I would probably watch the middle one and just skip the rest because it's self-contained enough that you're not going to miss anything. If you really want the whole experience, go right ahead, but you're going to have to struggle to get through that first movie unless you're just, I don't know. I mean, unless you're just really into Fear Street, and I don't even know then that it would be that much of a draw.
So sad.
Just a couple of quick things I'm going to throw out there for these. It's not really, anything. I'm not going to go into detail about them. There's a couple of movies that's out there, independent films, that I think are worth watching for our audience. The first one is called Psycho Gorman, and then the other film is Turbo Kid. I lumped these together even though there's nothing really similar about them, just because the way they were filmed and just the general vibes of them are so similar that I feel like they'd make a great double feature. Psycho Gorman's about this, it's about these kids, basically, a brother and sister, and it's somewhere in America. It doesn't really reveal, I don't think, where they're at. And they happen to, stumble upon this weird pod that's buried under the ground, and somehow they punch in the right code to release whatever's inside of it, and they reveal this horrible alien overlord from another planet who at one point in the long distant past traveled from planet to planet, killing or enslaving everybody who was on that. And he was finally, just barely captured and of all places sent to Earth, because Earth at that time was just a backwater place that nobody cared about. And they thought that nobody would ever discover him anyways. And so these kids happened to awaken him. And the funny thing is, whoever opens it up, they get this crystal. And the crystal is what gives, they name the character Psycho Gorman. That's not his name, but kids think it's a cool name for a evil overlord. Whoever has the crystal controls Psycho Gorman. So even though he's threatening to kill everybody, and he still does kill people, but it's a cheeky kind of killing people. You have to watch the movie to see what I'm talking about. He's controlled by them. So like the sister is clearly the alpha of the two kids, even though I think she's the youngest, because she's kind of psycho herself. And so when she gets access to this crystal, of course she loves the fact that she's got this great big alien overlord who can do what she wants. Now she's not, she doesn't want genocide or anything like that, but if somebody makes her mad and they happen to get turned into like this weird brain puddle type, monster or something, she's cool with it. Whatever, she's fine. It's kind of
nothing more psycho. I can say from experience, nothing more psycho than a little girl.
But I mean, the effects are decent. I mean, it's on a budget, but they do really great with the Psycho Gorman suit itself. The animated, stuff they do, like lightning bolts and stuff like that, are well enough done. They're actually better than the movie we're going to be discussing tonight. Spoiler alert. And just generally the overall, it's just like a tongue-in-cheek type, concept to the movie, and it's just enjoyable. And it's got a real 80s vibe to it, even down to the score, because the score's kind of like got this retro synth sound to it. So if
the synthetic,
yeah, like the keyboard, like the Cars, that sort of sound,
Oh, come on! I'm not gonna hear a fucking Kmart version of Moving in Stereo.
No, it's not that, but you'll hear like something similar. It's like
Yeah.
But
watch me. I'll watch it and I'll hear and I'll be like, oh my God, that's this song.
it's on Shudder. I think it's a Shudder original, maybe. So
I need to get
You really need to get Shudder. But anyways, so there's that. And then Turbo Kid is really interesting because it's set in like a post-apocalyptic future. I think it's set in maybe Australia. I'm not really for sure. It's not the U.S. because they specifically mentioned at one point that they want to travel to the U.S. If they can ever make it there across the vast desert that is what used to be the ocean. But
wait, post-apocalyptic future Australia, isn't that happening right now? So maybe it's not the future?
Well, maybe. And it's also the fact that that's also the setting for Mad Max, and this has a lot of heavy Mad Max vibes. But
I kind of like that.
But it follows a kid, he is, hence the name Turbo Kid, who's surviving on his own in the apocalypse. All he cares about is collecting these comic books of a superhero that was popular prior to the apocalypse. And even though there's like there's all these people struggling to get water and people killing each other over that, the cannibals and all the other stuff you would think of in an apocalypse, he's just out there doing his thing, collecting his comic books and trading for shit whatever he can salvage out in the wasteland. So it's also got that tongue-in-cheek vibe, very similar to Psycho Gorman. That's why I said they're very similar to each other. Both have the 80s vibe to them. And it's also got this cool thing where he discovers a female, he happens upon the female lead in the movie, and she's really clingy and really annoying, and he tries to throughout the course of like the first part of the film tries to ditch her at every opportunity, but she just keeps coming back, and it turns out that she is like the last model that was ever invented of this certain type of basically robotic companion or whatever that was
like a cyborg.
Yeah, she's not really. I don't think she has like human parts. She's like she's more of an android, I guess, if you want to think of her that way. But I think there was something that was like programmed wrong in her, and she's kind of like, or she had like damage over time, so that's kind of why she's so quirky. She's got a lot of quirks too. Speaking back to Werewolves Within, she's kind of got her own. But throughout the course of the film, like the viewer and the character kind of gets endeared to her, because even though she's got these annoying qualities, she really does like care about the main lead, and she helps him out in a lot of cases. So whenever stuff starts to go really bad and some of his history is revealed about how he lost his parents and why he's on his own, she helps him overcome all that stuff. So it's a pretty good it's a feel good film whenever it ends up at the end, even if it is post apocalyptic.
I think I've seen Turbo Kid.
You think?
Oh, maybe I'm not sure, because when you said like the robot, if you will, was there ever a part in the movie where she like eventually had to go, like she failed?
Yes.
And did she kind of explain her life story at that point? Not her life story so much. Did she, before she went out, did she kind of explain how she works and what her function was or anything?
I think something similar to that. It's been a little while since I've seen it, but I think it's something like that.
Okay, I think I've seen this. Which is fine.
I mean, I think it's got Michael Ironsides as like the main baddie, and he's always good at chewing up the scenery, so he's interesting to watch as like the big bad of the movie, the warlord that, the Turbo Kid has to run up against. I don't know. I found it entertaining. It's very nostalgic if you're into the 80s stuff. Like I said, if you combine it with Psycho Gorman, you're going to have a good night if you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to discuss before we move on to what we normally discuss in these things is just released, literally this weekend that we're recording this, is James Gunn's Suicide Squad. Have you seen this, Llareyna?
Have not. I actually, to be honest with you, I wasn't really interested in going to see it. It's not that I didn't like the first Suicide Squad.
Oh, don't even consider that movie. That is complete and utter shit compared to this.
Garbage compared to this one. I mean, I don't know if you have you seen any of the animated Suicide Squads?
I can't say that I have. No.
Okay, Batman Assault on Arkham was a really good animated version of Suicide Squad, and I'll keep this short. And it kind of followed the first Suicide Squad, but not as dark. So did they go a little more darker route with the second one?
Oh, Lord, is this movie dark? I mean,
perfect.
It's dark in the sense of what's happening and the undertones, but it's got that James Gunn Guardians of the Galaxy humor all over top of that. So even though it's dark, it's palatable. I'll give you a perfect example. Well, first of all, I'll say this. It's on HBO Max. If you have that, watch it. You know, you don't have to go to the movie theater right now to watch it. I don't know. That's WB's decision. I think they kind of messed up on that. But if you have HBO Max, you know, it's on there right now. Watch it. It's great. As far as like just an example of the type of humor, there is a character at the beginning of this movie who is this awful looking CGI weasel character, and awful in the best of ways. He looks like a bad, like somebody who was in one of those, and goes back to James Gunn's history. James Gunn was originally, when he first got his start, was in a lot of trauma films. He did a lot of directing for like Lloyd Kaufman, for stuff like, I don't know that he worked on the Toxic Avenger, although there is a credit in this movie for Toxic Avenger, so I think he might pop up as an Easter egg in one of the scenes. But, I mean, if you've watched, like, Night of the Living Chickens or some kind of a movie where, like, a KFC, like, gets all the chickens come back to life and start attacking people, that's what you get with trauma, okay? So, James Gunn started out with that. He has this character called the Weasel, which maybe was a bad guy in DC. I'm not familiar. He really dips into like the worst D and C or D and Z grade villains in this movie for the best of purposes, just because of, you know, he points out how ridiculous they are. But the Weasel is contracted to help the Suicide Squad that's formed at the beginning of the movie, and this character looks like a bad, like suited character from like an old, like, you know, 80s film, but like but like, you know, with better CGI or something. Just the way he walks, the sounds he makes, like he's just ridiculous. His eyes are on different sides of his head. They're kind of, he's just ridiculous. And the very first thing they mention about him when he gets on the plane and they're introducing all the characters, and this goes back to how dark this movie is underneath. You got this weird looking, you know, Weasel, and the guy's like, yeah, Weasel here, he was busted on the charge of killing 27 children.
Oh,
and that's how the movie starts. Like, you literally have one of the characters that you're supposed to be rooting for who's a child murderer and a massive child murderer at that. And he's like this weird weasel. And
I mean, that is what Suicide Squad was, though.
But I mean, and it just goes on from there. Like, the reason I bring this up on a horror podcast is it's got those dark undertones. There is so much gore in this, and it is so good. Like, if you want to see blood splatter, if you want to see people get taken out in the most gruesome ways, you will get it in this movie. There is heads being blown off at every opportunity. There are people having limbs ripped off. There is blood splatters everywhere. It is nonstop. I mean,
okay, this is just my type of film.
But
I'm looking at the characters real quick. So really the only characters that are returning are Harley Quinn, Captain Boomerang, and Katana from the original one, or from the first one? What is this supposed to be? Is this supposed to be a part 2? Is this supposed to be a prequel? Is this supposed to be a sequel?
So I'm not going to spoil much, but this is not spoiling anything, and I'm not going to give away without too much. Okay, when it starts out, it is a semi-sequel. I say semi because they don't acknowledge anything that went on in the previous movie, but they acknowledge, and Katana's not in this. It's somebody else. It's like Mongoloida or something, like I've never heard of her. She's like, and they even make fun of it in the movie. They're like, what is she? Is she an alien? Is she a demigod? Like, you know, nobody knows what she is or what her powers are. But anyways, so it starts out in the movie, and it's playing it, and I love this. I love any time a movie starts out with a Johnny Cash song. You've instantly got me hooked whenever you start out with Johnny Cash, just like the Dawn of the Dead, you know, remake, when it starts out with that dark, you know, apocalyptic song that Johnny Cash is singing. This one starts out with Folsom Prison Blues, and it zooms in on Michael Rooker. For those who don't know, Merle from The Walking Dead. He played Mary Poppins, y'all. He played Yondu in Guardians of the Galaxy. He's a James Gunn alum. If there's a movie James Gunn's making, he's going to be in it. So he's sitting there. He's got this long, you know, straggly white hair. You can tell he's been in prison forever, and he's bouncing this ball. And this starts out something that I want to say about this movie. James Gunn's cinematography in this is amazing, because he starts out, and you see Michael Rooker's character, and then it pans up and it reveals that you've been looking at him from like this puddle of water that's at his feet, and it switches the camera like 300 or 180 degrees and like zooms and then shows him, and it moves away from the puddle up to his face. I love whenever movies do that. So it's got the good cinematography of that, and he's sitting there and he's bouncing this ball, and he's got all these X's on the wall that's got like this tape that he's taped on there. and he sits there and he bounces the ball against one, and it bounces in 2 or 3 different other spots where he's got the tape, and then it comes back to him. And so he keeps bouncing on the floor. Well, there's this little, and this goes back to the dark undertones of this movie. There's this little yellow canary that flies in, and it's like, or some kind of bird, and a little yellow bird, and it like lands, and Johnny Cash is still playing during all this, and it lands like somewhere in that cell or place where he's at, and it starts picking at the ground. He looks at it, and he's got this grumpy looking look on his face, and he takes the ball and he bounces at a point on one of the walls. It bounces around like 6-7 times, hits the bird square in like the neck and kills it. He picks it up. It's still got blood splattered on the ball, wipes it on his pants like it's no big deal, and then they call him in there to hire him. And apparently his character's name is I can't remember now. It's something like he's like an expert, but that's not the word. It starts with a T or whatever. But anyways, he's like he apparently like he is the ultimate martial artist, and weapons specialist. So that's why they're hiring him. So you get him, and Harley Quinn joins up from the original movie, and she acknowledges that whenever she sees Flag or whatever I think his name is, who was kind of like the government leader of the first movie. She acknowledges that she's worked with him before, and Captain Boomerang. She recognizes both of them. They're the only ones that return. And then you get a bunch of other weirdos. You get Merle's or Michael Rooker's character. You get the Weasel.
Yes.
You get that Mongoloid lady. She's like this orange lizard skinned lady with like this weird, like almost Thanos type armor on. You get some character who carries around a javelin, and his name's literally the Javelin. And he's almost like a pseudo ripoff of like, I kind of got a vibe of like Aquaman, but not Jason Momoa Aquaman, but the cheesy one from the comic books type vibe,
Oh, okay.
He talks like this, like he's very self-important, And you get, there's just like 2 or 3. One of them's called Blackguard, and all he's just like a weapons expert, and like you get some more generic people. And the movie starts out with them, and then it switches. I'm not going to say why, but it switches to a completely separate group of Suicide Squad people, and they're the ones you follow in the movie.
Okay.
Harley Quinn.
It's going to be interesting.
Harley Quinn comes back. But she's not with the original group when the movie starts, like or not the group that you follow throughout the movie. She doesn't start with them. She has her own little side arc that they bring into it.
This is I have to watch it because my brain is going crazy. So I know we talked about the first Suicide Squad. Okay, Birds of Prey came out. Is that anything that you would have to see, or would this kind of derail that film? I don't know if you've seen Birds of Prey.
I have seen Birds of Prey. It's a decent movie. There's a few things they did in that I thought was kind of goofy, but overall it was all right. The only thing that they reference in this from Birds of Prey is the fact that somebody looks up when Harley shows up on the airplane at the beginning when they're loading everybody up. Is there like and I don't remember, I think it was Boomerang. Somebody was like, or no, it wasn't Boomerang. It was Nathan Fillion plays some kind of character who is TKD, or TDK. TDK is his character because his name ends up being the Detachable Kid, and literally his only power is he can detach his body parts. That's how, that's literally his power. So anyways, TDK looks up and he's like, Harley, I thought, and this is Nathan Fillion, from Firefly and that sort of thing. So he's always great. And he looks up and he's like, Harley, I thought you were out of all this. I thought you got pardoned. And she's like, I was. I got some road rage and I got back in trouble. And in Birds of Prey, they reveal that she's finally out, of prison, and she's no longer going to be, she don't have to go through the Suicide Squad shit anymore because she's finally, she's made it legit. But in this, it's a throwaway line. She's like, yeah, I got pissed off with somebody road rage, and now I'm back in it, and now, and then they just move on. So it's literally the only like tie into Birds of Prey at all.
Okay. So really not important to have seen it, or I have not seen Birds of Prey, so I was not interested in it.
Birds of Prey is interesting in a few ways, just for the fact that it does develop Harley Quinn, and it's more of her movie than it is the Birds of Prey anyways, which is kind of dumb that they named it that way. but you don't have to see that for this because whatever Harley learned, this is appropriate to Harley Quinn, honestly. Whatever things that she learned, other than the fact that she moved on from the Joker in that movie, they went right out the window because she's, very, like schizophrenic type character. So like,
Okay, and that's the thing. That's why I wasn't interested, because they're like, well, Birds of Prey was kind of to develop her as a better character. She's not crazy. She's actually very smart, which technically she is. We know Harleen Quinzel was a psychiatrist. Okay, we get it. But she got into her own psyche and developed her own feelings on things, which were obviously triggered by the Joker, because that's how he is as a character. And I know that Birds of Prey was designed to kind of make her independent because he's an abuser and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we get it. It's a fucking comic, okay? So,
and that's literally,
I don't know. I just wasn't interested in Birds of Prey, not because I feel like she didn't deserve that, but it's because, did we need a whole film to really understand that?
I mean, I don't know. It helps in the long run kind of to describe why she was able to break away from the Joker, but it's not necessary at all to watch this film. So I mean,
yeah, because you said it sounds like she reverts back to her craziness in this film.
She's got her morals still intact. I'll say that. Like there's a scene later in the movie where you think, okay, it seems like she's falling for another guy who's just as bad as the Joker, and then something happens, and then you realize, and she even says it. She's like, "I was that way. I'll never be that way again." So they kept that development. They did.
Okay.
But as to how important it is to see that development, that's only if you're a Harley Quinn fan. If you don't care, this movie, it's sufficient enough explanation of this movie. You do not have to see the other one for that.
Alrighty.
But the other reason I bring it up, besides the dark undertones and the gore, the main thing that they're going after in this movie ends up being a very Lovecraftian type character, villain from DC.
Nice.
And so even though it's a goofy character, it does have Lovecraftian type vibes, especially the fact that there's almost like a pseudo army of zombies at the end of the movie that they're fighting. So
Okay, you've got me peaked again.
So it does have the horror undertones, and I think this, honestly, to me, this movie is an instant. Like it's probably my favorite DC film of the DC universe. If they want to lump that in together, I'm not counting all the old Batman movies because they don't lump those in anyways. I'm talking about like of the Batflex and of the Jason Momoa Aquaman movies, all that stuff. This is my favorite, and it's just because they dip so much in the DC's like back catalog, and he uses it so well. But this is like quintessential James Gunn, like the humor, the horror elements. Like, I mean, if you saw Slither, that also had Michael Rooker in it as the main character, like he really like goes back into that and taps into like his roots way more than he did in Guardians. And I want to say, this movie is him expressing himself better than Guardians. So, like, Guardians is him with handcuffs on. Like, he gets in what he can, and you get his sense of humor. But this movie is that with the dark undertones that makes it just that much better. So,
see, that's the difference between DC and Marvel. Just saying.
Oh, and do you have anything else to add to that? That was a lot of banter, but I felt like it was good banter, so...
Yeah, I do not. I think I think we went over it pretty well. So we should probably roll into Attack of the Bees or the film review, whatever you'd like to do.
Well, let's go to Attack of the Bees.
Yes, I'll cue the music.